Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. All right. My name is Janelle Johnson, and I serve as the Diversity and Inclusion Program Manager here at DOT. And on behalf of Audrey Farley, our Executive Director for the Department of Transportation's Office of the Assistant Secretary for Research and Technology, it is my sincere pleasure to welcome you to DOT's annual African American Heritage Celebration. Unfortunately, Audrey Farley could not be with us this morning as she is attending the Secretary's Executive Management Team meeting, but I am certain that she is with us here in spirit. So before we begin this morning, I'd like to take a few moments and welcome our distinguished guest. Special Advisor to the Secretary, Mr. Willis Morris. Our keynote speaker for today, Ms. Maureen Bunyan. Deputy Assistant Secretary for Administration, Mr. Keith Washington. Departmental Office of Civil Rights Director, Ms. Leslie Prawl. Today's soloist, Ms. Paulette Grady. The Archbishop Carroll High School Choir and Director, Stacy Claytor. And the Washington Math and Science Technology Public Charter School Color Guard, led by Master Sergeant Calvin Brown. And to all of our other distinguished guests and the wonderful men and women of DOT, especially those joining us via live stream from our DOT field locations, welcome. We thank you for being here today. Each year, DOT makes it a priority to join the nation in paying respect to the rich history of African Americans by honoring their legacy and finding ways to continue advancing their future. This year's national theme for African American History Month is the crisis in African American education. And today's program will focus on the importance of education and things we can do and are doing to help mitigate the disparities and inequalities in our educational system. The department appreciates the importance of education and diligently works to provide opportunities for all. We participate in and support the Youth Empowerment and Success, better known as the YES Mentoring Program. Our university transportation centers include historically black colleges and universities and minority-serving institutions. And the Federal Highway Administration offers internships through the Summer Transportation Internship Program for diverse groups. Our students are our future, and we are committed to ensuring that we all have access to opportunities that will help them succeed and move our nation forward. Today's celebration will follow the order outlined in your program. We will begin our program with the singing of the national anthem and presentation of colors, and then we will have the introduction of Mr. Willis Morris by Keith Washington and Mr. Morris's remarks, followed by a selection from Archbishop Carroll High School Choir, and then the introduction of our keynote speaker, and then we will hear from our keynote speaker, Ms. Maureen Bunyan, which will be followed by closing remarks from Leslie Prawl. And then the Archbishop High School Choir will lead us in the anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing, to close out our program today. Now, please rise for the singing of our national anthem by Ms. Paulette Grady and the presentation of colors by the Washington Math and Science Technology Public Charter School Color Guard.
Oh, say, can you? Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare of bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does the star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Good morning, DOT. I am Keith Washington, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Administration, and I'm honored to be with you today to introduce Mr. Willis Morris, Senior Advisor to Secretary Elaine L. Chao. Prior to joining the department, Willis served in leadership roles in both the public and private sectors. He has an extensive background in public policy and health management policies. Most recently, he was a principal at Statecraft Staffing, where he identified and recruited candidates to serve as public servants. Previously, he worked at Bloomberg Government, where he led healthcare product development and found ways to enhance healthcare data. In the public sector, he served in the Office of the Governor for the State of California, where he was the Director of State and Federal Relations. Prior to this role, he was the Senior Advisor to the Secretary and the Deputy Secretary at the Department of Health and Human Services. As the functional Chief Operating Officer, Morris managed the day-to-day operations of 13 state agencies with 15,000 employees and a budget of over $5 billion. Willis brings an extensive and seasoned background to the department, and we are honored to have him here today to kick off the African American History Month program. Thank you, Willis, and welcome to the Department of Transportation.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Secretary Elaine L. Chao, welcome to the celebration and recognition event for Black History Month here at the U.S. Department of Transportation. I want to share a few thoughts about Carter G. Woodson, the man who initiated Negro History Week, as it was known then in February 1926, after recognizing incompleteness in the presentation of history in American schools. Dr. Woodson was born in Virginia in 1875, growing up on his parents' farms. He was required to do work to help the family survive. His uncles ran a schoolroom, which he attended as time permitted. He was motivated. He read his Bible, his father's newspapers, and he taught himself the common school subjects of the day. Later, as a teenager, He worked as a sharecropper and in coal mines, but continued learning whenever time permitted. Finally, at the age of 20, Dr. Woodson entered high school, graduating 2 years later. After graduation, he went on to become the principal of his high school before earning his bachelor's degree in literature from Berea College in Kentucky in 1903. Then he went on to earn additional degrees from the University of Chicago before earning his PhD from Harvard University in 1912. After working in secondary and higher education, Dr. Woodson dedicated himself to the field of African American history. He helped organize associations, establish educational journals, and wrote many books, including The Miseducation of the Negro in 1933. Miseducation continues to be regularly required reading at many universities today. Dr. Woodson encouraged the study of African American history. As previously stated, he began Negro History Week in February 1926. He chose February as the month for the initial week-long celebration to honor the birth month of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. And as a result of his vision, when we think about agencies like our Federal Railroad Administration, we're able to tell the story of Andrew Beard, who in 1897 received a patent for a device he called the Jenny coupler. The Jenny coupler automatically joined cars by simply allowing them to bump into each other, or as Mr. Beard described, the horizontal jaws engage each other to connect the cars. We can also now celebrate and tell the story of Elijah McCoy, whose genius in 1872 developed a lubricating cup for the continuous flow of oil on the gears of the engines of steam trains. Mr. McCoy's invention was so popular and in demand that manufacturers and mechanics insisted on having the real McCoy for their engines. In the field of aviation, we can tell the story of Bessie Coleman, who in 1921 demonstrated the education and skills necessary to earn a pilot's license and become one of the first women aviators and stunt flyers in the United States. Bessie Coleman's accomplishment served as a source of inspiration to astronaut Mae Jemison. We can also tell the story of Janet Harmon Bragg, who in 1943 became the first black woman to receive her commercial pilot's license. When we think about infrastructure, we can tell the story of Archibald Alexander, a design and construction engineer whose work includes the Tidal Basin Bridge here in Washington, D.C., along with the Whitehurst Freeway. A contemporary leader whom we can all look to is Dr. Freeman Hrabowski, a mathematician by training and a college president known for his academic innovation. I could go on, and I hope you make more time to learn, but again, on behalf of Secretary Elaine L. Chao, I want to welcome you all, and I hope you enjoy the remainder of the program. Thank you.
We will now have a selection by the Archbishop Carroll High School Choir.
That was beautiful. As the choir takes their seat, I have the distinct privilege and honor of introducing our guest speaker this morning. She is a 47-year veteran of television news and anchored the 6 o'clock weeknight newscast for ABC 7 WJLA TV. She is known as a leader in the newsroom and an advocate for women and minorities in journalism. She is Miss Maureen Bunyan. She is the founder of the International Women's Media Foundation, which serves women in the media in 100 countries. She is also a founder of the National Association of Black Journalists, also known as NABJ, where she was inducted into the NABJ Hall of Fame in January of 2014. In recognition of her significant contributions to broadcasting, Ms. Bunyan has been honored with numerous professional and community service awards, including being named Washingtonian of the Year in 1992. Additionally, she was inducted into the Hall of Fame of the Washington chapter of the Society of Professional Journalists, the Silver Circle of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, and the Broadcast Pioneers Club of Washington. She has been awarded 7 local Emmys and the Ted Yates Award given by the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences to Washington, D.C. news broadcasters who are leaders in the profession. She was named Journalist of the Year by NABJ, and she received the annual Immigrant Achievement Award from the American Immigrant Law Foundation in 2002. In June of 2014, Ms. Bunyan was knighted and inducted into the Order of Orange Nassau, a Dutch order of chivalry. The Order of Orange Nassau is a chivalric honor given to those who deserve recognition for exemplary contributions to society. She was inducted because of her long-standing commitment to build and strengthen ties between Aruba and the United States. Over the years, she has used her extensive network and experience as a journalist to mentor young Arubans and create educational opportunities with the Aruban Ministry of Education and American universities such as Harvard University. Her lifelong commitment and work have contributed to the benefit of Aruba's social and cultural development. Ms. Bunyan has an extensive record of service to the community. She is a board member of the International Women's Media Foundation. She also serves on the National Advisory Board of the Casey Journalism Center on Children and Families, the Girl Scout Council of the National Capital Women's Advisory Board, the Advisory Committee of Women in Film and Video, and is a board member of Women of Washington. Ms. Bunyan attended the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, Columbia University School of Journalism, and holds a master's degree from Harvard University Graduate School of Education. She was born in Aruba and grew up in southeastern Wisconsin, and she is of Guyanese descent. And we're excited to have her share with us today here at DOT. Let's give a warm Department of Transportation welcome to Miss Maureen Bunyan.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, Ms. Johnson. And thank you so much to Ms. Collier for bringing me in and taking care of me and getting me a little bit of coffee that I needed. And I am really, really thrilled to be here, especially with the wonderful people here sharing the podium with me. I know that some of you are immigrants. Please raise your hands and let me see who among you in this group are of immigrant descent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, let's make it an even dozen, including me. And the reason I ask you that is because, as Ms. Johnson mentioned, my family is an immigrant family. And right now in the United States, immigrants and immigration is a hot topic. Not going to talk about the politics of all that, or even the influence of the media on that, but I want to talk personally about that. We immigrants carry something unusual, I think, and it has to do with the theme of this month's conference. The theme is education, and the broader theme is the crisis in education, but I don't want to talk about crisis. I want to talk about what it is that makes this country attract immigrants like my family and yours, and what it is that some of us, I hope, as immigrants have contributed to the civil society of the United States. And I want to start on a very personal level. My parents were born in Guyana, South America, when Guyana was a British colony. Now, most of us don't come from countries that are currently colonies because colonialization in great part has stopped across the world. Most of it ended 40, 50 years ago with the independence of the African states that had been former European colonies, as well as the independence of the Caribbean states, all of which were former European colonies. But I know from my father and my mother what it was like to grow up in a country where one did not have opportunity for an education. My father was a very smart young man. He was born on a sugarcane estate. He was educated on the estate until the age of 10 when he went to a public school in Guyana. Now, in the Guyanese system, I should say in the British system, because at that time Guyana was still a British colony, here is what happened to young people at the age of 13. Under the old British education system, when a youngster reached the age of 13, he or she would take a comprehensive exam, not unlike the ones that all of you and many, many people take in this country. The difference, however, in that exam is that it was given once a year, and if you took the exam and passed, you could go on to, quote, higher education, which meant high school. If you took the exam and failed, your education stopped. My father had malaria, and when he was scheduled to take the exam, he was sick, so he missed the exam. Unlike the education system in this country, when a person misses an exam in school, you just reschedule it, right? Not in Guyana, and not for my father. He missed the exam. There was no retake. There was no coming back a week later or even a year later. You had one day in your life that would determine your future education. My father missed that day. So he grew up by himself, basically teaching himself, getting himself through his own form of high school with the help of his mother and other friends, and then getting an apprenticeship with an electrician in Georgetown, Guyana, his home. But he was angry about the fact that that was the limit of his education, because he knew he had the capacity for much, much more. So as an adult, he learned as much as he could. He even took correspondence courses from the United States. Now today, when we think of a correspondence course, it sounds like an antique kind of thing. We don't take correspondence courses per se. We have long-distance learning today, and we have the internet. Imagine what it was like in the 1920s and 30s to take a correspondence course in electricity. You had to wait for weeks for the books and the papers to come. You had to send your papers and your assignments back to the school in the United States for the teacher to grade them, and then the teacher had to send it back to you by mail. It took months to do a course. But my father never gave up. He moved to Aruba in the 1930s. My mother moved after that. They were married. My sisters and I were born. Fortunately for us, the Aruban school system, which was based on the Dutch model, was pretty good. So I learned to read by the time I was 4 years old. And my father helped me a lot because he made me, encouraged me, sat with me to help me learn my vocabulary and to learn how to read. And he told me to read everything that was ever put in front of me, whether it was a textbook, a magazine, a short article, a long article, a novel, a history. He said, somebody put the work into this so that you could learn something from them. So I grew up with books, and I grew up with a father who valued education. When we moved from Aruba to southwestern Wisconsin, it was for the purpose of getting more education, not just for my father, but for me and my sisters. And not only did we move to Wisconsin, can you imagine that? We moved to rural Wisconsin because my father heard that the education system in the rural school districts in Wisconsin was better than the education system in the city of Milwaukee. So we bought a little house, and we went to, I finished secondary school. My sisters finished secondary school there. For all the years that we were living there, we were the only family and only students of color in the county. So we had to learn a lot about our environment. And we tried also to teach the people in our environment about who we were. In the 1960s in Wisconsin, my father continued his education, and I will tell you very briefly because it's a long story. I was enrolled in college, and my younger sister was enrolled in college, and my father was enrolled in college at the same time. All three of us were doing undergraduate studies at the same time. My father's field was electrical engineering. He graduated with his bachelor's degree, but he wanted to also get a degree in teaching. In order to do that, he commuted almost 600 miles every week to a college in northern Wisconsin that had the curriculum that he wanted for his education degree. He did this for 2 years. What I learned from that was never to complain about the cost of an education. He also taught me that if you have a will, you can do anything. No obstacles can lie in your way. The stronger your will, the more your desire to accomplish, the more you will accomplish. You cannot accomplish without the will. You cannot sit and read a book and learn anything if you do not have the will to learn. My dad went on to school, went on to get 2 master's degrees, and he worked on his PhD. He managed to finish all of the coursework, but he was not able to finish his dissertation because he lost his eyesight. And I know his heart was broken because of that, but in the meantime, he became an excellent educator and influenced a lot of young people, not only in Wisconsin, but also here in Washington, because he came to live with me in the 1970s, and he started teaching at UDC, the University of the District of Columbia, and he ran the electronics laboratory at the District of Columbia University. I'm afraid that I disappointed my father, however, because I know he wanted me to be an engineer. I know he wanted me to study STEM, as you call it. I know he pictured me following in his footsteps. Unfortunately, I did not develop or inherit his math skills. So the M in STEM was not for me. However, I learned to respect people who worked in technology and engineering and science. And I learned to learn about those fields. And even today, whenever I go to a bookstore, if I buy a book on history, I also buy a book having to do with engineering, mathematics, technology, or science. That was the world in which I grew up. That is the world that I wish every child could grow up in. Having a parent who will not stop at anything, who will always encourage you, who will demand the best of you, who will expect your best, and who will know when you're not doing your best, and who will keep you focused. One of the problems in today's world, unfortunately, is we have such a hard time focusing because we have so many distractions. I know that you have supported STEM education here at the Department of Transportation, and I want to tell you that even though I am not a scientist, technician, engineer, I have found ways to support STEM education too. And I'd like to share two of them with you. We have these young people from Archbishop Carroll. We had our wonderful color guard. I have been trying to help with a STEM school in Washington, D.C., the Howard University Middle School, which is all STEM, and many, many of the students there are young women. I urge you to get to know that school and to share the resources of the Department of Transportation with them. I'm also very active with an organization, not as a full member, but as a supporter, called Women in Technology. Do any of you know this group? This group is headquartered in McLean, Virginia. I got to know them about 15 years ago. They are the top women in technology in our country, many of them living right here. They work in aviation, they work in the government, they work in private industry. Amazing group of women. And those of you who are in technology here at the department, I urge you to look at their website, WIT, Women in Technology. They hold programs, they have networking, they give scholarships to bright young people, young women interested in STEM education. They're an amazing group, and they're across the country. Now, I've talked a lot about my own formal education and the inspiration of my dad and his formal education. But sometimes when we think of education, we think only of formal and not of informal. Informal education takes place every day. You don't have to go to a school to do it. When I came to Washington, I'll give you an example of my informal education about Washington, D.C. When I moved here in 1973, I'd never been to Washington. I'd never come on a class visit to tour the monuments. I had never set foot in any federal agency, much less the White House or on Capitol Hill. My very first news assignment was to cover the passage of home rule legislation by the U.S. Congress. So the very first day at work, I had to go to Capitol Hill to a congressional hearing room to listen to discussions about the passage of home rule. Believe me, I had to educate myself quickly. I also realized that in order to survive in Washington, I would not only have to try to be a good reporter, an anchor person, but I'd have to learn about this city and this region. How could I do that? Well, I could have gotten on one of the tourist buses and driven around. I could have visited the restaurants to find out what the great cuisine was. I could have gone to at that time, the football games. But I decided going to learn about things was not the way to learn about Washington. Going to learn about places was not the way to learn about Washington. I had to learn about the people. Because the people run the places, and do the things that make the city work. So for 2 years, I devoted myself to doing one thing every single week. I took someone new to lunch. If I'd been in a gathering like this, what I would have done, after the gathering, I would have said to you, or you, would you like to have lunch with me next week? My treat. I met hundreds of people, and they in turn told me about hundreds of other people. And I learned about what makes Washington tick. I went out to lunch with cab drivers. I went out to lunch with bus drivers. I went out to lunch with members of Congress. So nobody could ever say to me, oh, you don't know how this place functions. You don't know who does what. You don't know what you're talking about when you give your stories. Oh, yes, I did. And I've continued this, not every week, so please. And it's not my treat anymore. But I have continued doing this because this is part of my continuing education and is part of my informal education. Another form of informal education, of course, is movement. Moving our bodies to go places, travel, whether it's getting on a train, a bus, a plane, or whatever, going to places you haven't been before. A lot of us get into ruts about our vacations. And I know those of you who have families, you have a challenge. We need to go to places we've never been before. We need to cross oceans, not just cross our country or this continent. We need to see and learn from other people, living people today. Not just through the news media, not just through stories from your neighbors who've traveled, not just from movies from different countries. You need to put your feet on the ground in these countries so that you could understand what makes this country tick as well as what makes that country work. Well, I wouldn't be a good educator if I didn't have some homework for you. So right now, I'd like you to take out your phones or your notepads, pieces of paper, pencils, anything, because I have some assignments for you. You thought you were going to get away from this without having an assignment, not when the theme is education. And I have a couple things to tell you, and I want to share these things with you because I do believe we have a crisis in education in the United States. However, I think part of the crisis is because we don't understand our history. Part of the crisis is we don't quite know what to teach ourselves about ourselves anymore. Because we've gotten into a rut, placing ourselves in a particular position, saying, for example, we are the best educated people in the world. Not true. We have the highest standard of living in the world. We no longer even have the best mortality, the lowest mortality rate in the world. So we need to change our education system, not to criticize ourselves, not to reinforce a mentality of crisis, but to educate ourselves and to inspire ourselves to move forward and to deal with some of these societal problems. And to do that, we have to know our history. Because this is Black History Month, I want to share with you some information that I hope you will take seriously and that you will follow up on, because I'm not going to come back a year from now and give you a quiz. I can't even come back next week to give you a quiz, so I have to trust you. I want you to get familiar with the work of a wonderful man named John Henrik Clarke. Does anybody know that name? John Henry Clark was what's called a Pan-Africanist. He died in 1998. He was born in Alabama. He taught himself how to read and write. He was extraordinarily intelligent. He ended up his career as a professor emeritus at Cornell University, even though he never got a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or a PhD. There are 3 videos I'd like you to look at. You can find these on YouTube. I'm going to give you the titles of the videos. One video is entitled, Education for Liberation. The second video is entitled, Education, the highest form of struggle. Education, the highest form of struggle. The third video is entitled, Are We Ready for the 21st Century? Education for Liberation, Education, the highest form of struggle, and Are We Ready for the 21st Century? Now, these are long videos. This is not your 2-second rap video. These videos are an hour and a half long lectures by Mr. Clark. They are profound, not only for the time in which he gave them, but they are profound for us today. I also want to give you 2 books for those of you who are not video prone, but who read. The first book is entitled, The Fortunes of Africa. The Fortunes of Africa. And it's subtitled, A 5,000-Year History of Wealth, Greed, and Endeavor. The Fortunes of Africa. The author is Martin Meredith, Meredith. The second book I would like you to read is entitled The Half, H-A-L-F, as in Frank, Has Never Been Told. The Half Has Never Been Told. The subtitle of that book is Slavery and the Making of American Capitalism. Slavery and the Making of American Capitalism. And the author is Edward E. Baptist, B-A-P, as in Peter, T-I-S-T. And I give you those 2 books. These books, just like the videos of Dr. Clark, are not leisure reading. These books are serious historical documents, and those of you who love history will love these books. But more than the fact that they're historical documents, they put into perspective what is wrong with American education in this country. Not just for black people, but for everybody. They are challenging books, but they're also enlightening books and inspiring books. They are not books to be read on the beach in Aruba. I want to leave you with 3 quotations. These are from Dr. Clark, whose videos I mentioned to you. These are quotations on the subject of people of the African diaspora, which is what African Americans are, which is what Caribbean African people of African descent are, which is what half of the population of Brazil is. We are the diaspora of Africa. We are the fruits of Africa. And these quotes from Dr. Clark are, "Education, like liberation, is something you take into your own hands. If someone gives you education or liberty, they can also take it back." The second quote from Dr. Clark, "We assume that an oppressor will be happy to educate us. No one will educate you so you can take power from them." And the last quote, "When you are educated in struggle, you are educated for reality." When you are educated in struggle, when you understand people's struggles, you have an education in reality. I hope you will get those two books. I hope you will go on YouTube and look for the videos by Dr. Clark. The books and the videos are not easy reading or easy watching, but they are immensely enlightening. I have learned so much from them. One of the people that I wish I'd had a chance to meet in life was Dr. Clark, but he died in 1998. And I hope that you will be as inspired as I have been by those quotations, by those books, by those videos, and by the many, many, many people in this country, some of us immigrants, some of us born here, who understand that the hallmark of our system is education, because with education there is hope, with education there is faith in the system, with education there is continuity. And if we don't want to have those things, we can accept the status quo. But those of us who have come here because of what this country has to offer did not come here to make $1 million, did not come here to make friends, did not come here to build houses or to start families. We came first to get an education because we understand that is the basis of everything. And even though we struggled, the struggle prepared us, as Dr. Clark said, for reality. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ms. Bunyan, for your incredibly inspiring remarks. We really appreciate your thoughtfulness and your challenge to us here today. On behalf of the Departmental Office of Civil Rights, we're grateful that you all could participate with us today. We wanted to thank the Secretary and her representative, Mr. Morris, Keith Washington, Janelle Johnson, for their sharing their insights and perspectives at this event. And of course, Paulette Grady, the Archbishop Carroll High School, and the Washington Mathematics, Science, Technology Public Charter School Color Guard for sharing their talent with us here today. We also want to thank all the DOT employees, some of you are standing in the background, who helped us get this event organized today and helped us put it on. I want to thank Daryl Hart from OSTR in particular, and my office who worked together to put this event together. This was a wonderful opportunity to lift up our heroes in the African American community across time who have contributed so much to the progress of this nation and to transportation in particular. Now, Mr. Morris gave you a long list of African Americans who have contributed over time to the transportation industry, who have invented things, who have been the first in many professions. And in the Civil Rights Office, we like to lift up our civil rights heroes this month. as they connect to transportation and in particular transportation justice. And we all know about Rosa Parks and John Lewis and Dr. Martin Luther King, but we also like to talk about the unsung heroes, the people who quietly stood up for civil rights. The story of Claudette Colvin, who I hope you all know about, the 15-year-old who refused to give up her seat on a Montgomery, Alabama bus 9 months before Rosa Parks did, and then became a plaintiff in the federal lawsuit that eventually outlawed segregation of the buses. She was a high school student at the time. The contribution also of Joanne Robinson, who was a professor at Alabama State University, who helped plan the Montgomery bus boycott, famously mimeographed all the notices for it because they didn't have phones and text, and she had to go put the notices out all over the city. And then, even more famously, offering up the name of her pastor when a spokesperson was needed for the group. His name, of course, was Dr. Martin Luther King. In celebrating Black History Month, our office wants to celebrate the inclusion and diversity, and we remain committed to ensuring that everyone at DOT gets an opportunity to succeed and make a contribution. And you've heard a lot about STEM here today, and that's because at DOT it's very important. Much of our work is based on design and engineering and construction and technology and safety. And as a department, you also heard, we have many opportunities to develop training and professionals in these areas. We have job training, career opportunities. We do outreach at educational institutions to promote the benefit of transportation, education, and research. And we also have great mentoring programs and internships. And we urge you today to become and stay engaged in these endeavors so that all of us may flourish and make DOT as successful as possible. So we're now, after the Archbishop Carol Choir gives us one more presentation, we're going to invite you to join us for a little bit of refreshments over here on the left. And thank you so much for coming, and we will see you next year.
this concludes our program. Thank you so much for joining us today.